Maybe she had a real artifact here. But as she scrutinized the writing itself, she saw that she was mistaken. There was a date on the upper left corner of the paper. July 22, 1997. A little more than 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks, that's all. She looked a little further. The message was long. It covered the front and back sides of the paper. And it didn't seem to request any reply of sorts. A quick glance showed no address or phone number anywhere, but she supposed it could have been written into the letter itself. She felt a twinge of curiosity as she held the message in front of her, and it was then, in the rising sunlight of the hot New England day, that she first read the letter that would change her life forever. July 22, 1997. My dearest Catherine, I miss you, my darling, as I always do. But today is especially hard because the ocean has been singing to me, and the song is that of our life together. I can almost feel you beside me as I write this letter, and I can smell the scent of white flowers that always reminds me of you. But at this moment, these things give me no pleasure. Your visits have been coming less often, and I feel sometimes as if the greatest part of who I am is slowly slipping away. I'm trying though, at night when I'm alone, I call for you, and whenever my age seems to be the greatest, you still seem to find a way to return to me. Last night in my dreams I saw you on the pier near Wrexville Beach. The wind was blowing through your hair and your eyes held the fading sunlight. I'm stuck as I see you leaning against the rail. You are beautiful, I think, as I see you, a vision that I can never find in anyone else. I slowly begin to walk towards you. And when you finally turn to me, I notice that others have been watching you as well. Do you know her? They ask me in a jealous whispers, and as you smile at me, I simply answer with the truth better than my own heart. I stop when I reach you and take you in my arms. I long for this moment more than any other. It is what I lived for, and when you return my embrace, I give myself over to this moment at peace once again. I raise my hand and gently touch your cheek, and you title your head and close your eyes. My hands are hard and your skin is soft, and I wonder for a moment if you pull back. But of course you don't, you never have, and it is at times like this that I know what my purpose is in life. I am here to love you, to hold you in my arms, to protect you. I'm here to learn from you and to receive your love in return. I'm here because there is no other place to be. But then, as always, the mist starts to form us as we stand close to one another. It is a distant fog that rises from the horizon, and I find that I grow fearful as it approaches. It slowly creeps in, enveloping the world around us and fencing us in as if to prevent escape. Like a rolling cloud, It blankets everything, closing until there is nothing left but the two of us. I feel my throat begin to close and my eyes well up with tears because I know it is time for you to go. The look you give me at the moment haunts me. I feel your sadness and my own loneliness, and the ache in my heart that had been silent for only a short time grows stronger as you release me. And then you spread your arms and steps back into the fog because it is your place and not mine. I long to go with you, but your only response is to shake your head. Because we both know that is impossible, and I watch with breaking heart as you slowly fade away. I found myself straining to remember everything about this moment. Everything about you, but soon, always too soon, your image vanishes and the fog rolls back to its faraway place, and I'm alone on the pier, and I do not care what others think as I bow my head and cry and cry and cry. Garrett, have you been crying? Diana asked as Teresa stepped onto the back deck, carrying both the bottle and the message. In her confusion, she had forgotten to throw the bottle away. Teresa felt embarrassed and wiped her eyes as Diana put down the newspaper and rose from her seat. Though she was overweight and had been since Teresa had known her, she moved quickly around the table, her face registering concern. Are you okay? What happened out there? Are you hurt? She bumped into one of the chairs as she reached out and took Teresa's hand. Teresa shook her head. No, nothing like that. I just found this letter and I don't know, after I read it, it couldn't help it. A letter? What letter? Are you sure you are okay? Diana's face hand gestured compulsively as she asked the questions. I'm fine, really. The letter was in a bottle. I found it washed up on the beach when I opened it and read it. She trailed off, and Diana's face lightened just a bit. Oh, that's good. For a second, I thought something awful happened, like someone had attacked you or something. Teresa brushed away a strand of hair that had blown onto her face and smiled at her concern. No, the letter just really hit me. It's silly, I know. I shouldn't have been so emotional, and I'm sorry for giving you a scare. Oh no, Diana said, shrugging. Nothing to be sorry about. I'm just glad you are okay. She paused for a moment. You said the letter made you cry. Why? What did it say? Teresa wiped her eyes and handed the letter to Diana and walked over to the wrought iron table where Diana had been sitting. Still feeling a bit ridiculous about crying, she did her best to compose herself. Diana read the letter slowly, and when she finished, she looked up to Teresa. Her eyes too were watering. It wasn't just her after all. It's beautiful, Diana finally said. It's one of the most touching things I have ever read. That's what I thought about. And you found it washed up on the beach when you were running? Teresa nodded. I don't know how it could have washed up there. The bay is sheltered from the rest of the ocean, and I have never heard of Wrightsville Beach. I don't know either, but it looked like it had washed up last night. I almost walked by it at first before I noticed when it was. Diana ran her finger over the writing and paused for a moment. I wonder who they are and why was it sealed in a bottle? I don't know. Aren't you curious? The fact was that Teresa was indeed curious. Immediately after reading it, she had read it again. Then a third time, what would it be like? She mused to have someone love her that way. A little, but so what? There is no way we'll ever know. What are you going to do with it? Keep it, I guess. I haven't really thought about it that much. Okay, Diana said with an indecipherable smile then. How was your jog? Teresa sipped a glass of juice she had poured. It was good. The sun was really something when it came up. It looked like the world was glowing. That is just because you were dizzy from lack of oxygen. Jogging does that to you. Teresa smiled and amused. So I take it you won't come with me this week. Diana reached for her cup of coffee with a doubtful look on her face. Not a chance. My exercise is limited to vacuuming the house every weekend. Can you picture me out there huffing and puffing? I would probably have a heart attack. It's refreshing once you get used to it. That may be true, but I'm not young and swilled like you are. The only time I can remember running at all was where I was a kid and the neighborhood's dog got out of the yard. I was running so fast and I almost wet my pants. Teresa laughed out loud. So what's on the agenda today? I thought we would do a little shopping and have a lunch in town. Are you up for something like that? That's what I was hoping you would say. The two women talked about the places they might go. Then Diana got up and went inside for another cup of coffee, and Teresa watched her as she left. Diana was 58 and round-faced, with hair that was slowly turning to gray. She kept it cut short and dressed without an excess of vanity and was, Teresa decided, easily the best person she knew. She was knowledgeable about music and art, and at work the recording of Mozart or Beethoven were always floating of her office into the chaos of the newsroom. She lived in a world of optimism and humor, and everyone who knew her adored her. When Diana came back to the table, she sat down and looked out across the bay. Isn't this the most beautiful places you have ever seen? Yes, it is, and I'm glad that you invite me. You needed it. You would have been absolutely alone in the apartment of yours. You sound like my mother. I will take that as a compliment. Diana reached across the table and picked up the letter again. As she perused it, her eyebrows raised, but she said nothing. To Teresa, it looked as though the letter had triggered something in her memory. "What is it? I just wonder," she said quietly. "Wonder what?" "Well, when I was inside, I got to thinking about this letter. I'm wondering if we should run this in your column this week." "What are you talking about?" Diana leaned across the table. "Just what I said. I think we should run this letter in your column this week, and I'm sure other people would love to read it." It really is unusual. People need to read something like this every once in a while. And this is so touching. I can picture 100 women cutting it out and tapping it to their refrigerators so their husbands can see it when they get home from work. We don't even know who they are. Don't you think we should get their permission first? That's just the point. We can't. I can talk to attorney at the paper, but I'm sure it's legal. We won't use their real names, and as long as we don't take credit for writing it or the wingle where it might be from, I'm sure there wouldn't be a problem. I know it's probably legal, but I'm not sure if it's right. I mean, this is a very personal letter, and I'm not sure it should be spread around so that everyone can read it. It's a human interest story, Teresa. People love those sort of things. Besides, there is nothing in there that might be embarrassing to someone. This is a beautiful letter, and remember, this Garrett person sent it to the bottle in the ocean. He had to know it would wash up somewhere. Teresa shook her head. "I don't know, Diana." "Well, think about it. Sleep on it if you have to. I think it's a great idea." Teresa did think about the letter as she undressed and got it in the shower. She found herself wondering about the man who wrote it, Garrett, if that was his real name, and who, if anyone, was Catherine, his lover or his wife. Obviously, but she wasn't around anymore. What she did, she wondered, or did something else happen that forced them apart? And why was it sealed in a bottle and set adrift? The whole thing was strange. Her reporter instincts took over then, and she suddenly thought that the message might not mean anything. It could be someone who wanted to write a love letter but didn't have anyone to send it to. It could even have been sent by someone who got some sort of vicarious thrill by making lonely women cry on a distant beaches. But as the word lured through her head again, she realized that possibilities were unlikely, and the letter obviously came from the heart. And to think that a man wrote it in all her years, she had never received a letter even close to that. Touching sentiments sent her away had always been emblazoned with hallmark greeting card logos. David had never been much of the writer, nor had anyone else she had dated. What would such a man be like, she wondered? Would he be as courting in person as the letter seemed to imply? She lathered and rinsed her hair, the question slipping from her mind as the cool water lowered down her body. She washed the rest of her body with washcloth and moisturizing soap, spent longer in the shower than she had to, and finally stepped out of the stall. She looked at herself in a mirror as she toweled off. Not too bad for a 36-year-old with an adolescent son. She thought to herself, her breast had always been smallish, and though it had bothered her when she was younger, she was glad now because they hadn't started to sag or droop like those of other women her age. Her stomach was flat and her legs were long and lean from all the exercise over the years. Nor did the crow's feet around the corners of her eyes seem to show as much, though that didn't make any sense. All in all, she was pleased with how she looked this morning, and she attributed her unusually easy acceptance of herself to being on a vacation. After putting on a little makeup, she dressed in beige shorts, a sleeveless white blouse, and a brown sandals. It would be hot and humid in another hour, and she wanted to be comfortable as she walked around Provincetown. She looked out the bedroom window, saw that the sun had risen even higher, and made a note to pick up some sunscreen. Her skin would burn if she didn't, and she would learn from experience that a sunburn was one of the quickest ways to ruin a beach trip. Outside on the deck, Diana had set breakfast on a table. There was a cantaloupe and grapefruit along with toasted bagels after taking her seat. She spread some low-fat cream cheese on them, and Diana was on one of her endless diets again. And the two of them talked for a long while. Brian was out golfing, as he would be every day this week, and he had to go in the early morning because he was on some sort of medication that Diana said does awful things to his skin if he spends too much time in the sun. Brian and Diana had been together 36 years, college sweethearts. They'd married the summer after graduation, right after Brian accepted a job with an accounting firm in downtown Boston. 8 years later, Brian became a partner and they bought a spacious house in Brooklyn, where they had lived alone for the past 28 years. They had always wanted children. But after 6 years of marriage, Diana had yet to become pregnant. They went to see a gynecologist and discovered that Diana's fallopian tubes had been scarred and that having a child was impossible. They tried to adopt for several years, but the list seemed never ending, and they eventually gave up hope. Then came the dark years. She once confided to Teresa, a time when the marriage almost failed, but their commitment, though shaken, remained solid. And Diana turned to work to fill the void in her life. She started at the Boston Times when women were rare and gradually worked her way up to corporate ladder. When she became managing editor 10 years ago, she began to take women reporters under her wing. Teresa had been her first student. After Diana had gone upstairs to shower, Teresa looked through the paper briefly. Then checked her watch. She rose from her seat and went to the phone to dial David's number. It was still early there, only 7 o'clock. But she knew the whole family would be awake by now. Kevin always rose at the crack of dawn, and for once she was thankful that someone else had to share in that wonderful experience. She paced back and forth as the phone rang a few times before Annette picked up. Teresa could hear the TV in the background and the sound of carrying baby. Hi, it's Teresa. Is Kevin around? Oh, hi, of course he's there. Hold on for just a second. The phone clanked down on her counter and Teresa listened as Annette called for him. Kevin, it's for you. Teresa on the phone. The fact that she wasn't referred to as Kevin's mom hurt more than she expected. But she didn't have time to dwell on it. Kevin was out of breath when he reached the phone. Hey Mom, how are you doing? How is your vacation? Actually, she felt a pang of loneliness at the sound of his voice. It was still high, childlike, but she knew it was only a matter of time before it changed. It is beautiful, but I only got here yesterday night. I haven't done much except for jogging this morning. Were there a lot of people on the beach? No, but I saw a few people heading out as I finished. Hey, when do you take off with your dad? In a couple days. His vacation doesn't start until Monday, so that's when we leave. Right now, he's getting ready to go into the office to do some work so that he'll be free and clear by the time we go. Do you want to talk to him? No, I don't have to. I was just calling to tell you that I hope you'll have a good time. It's going to be blast. I saw a brochure on the river trip. Some of the rapids look pretty cool. Well, you be careful. Mom, I'm not a kid anymore. I know. Just reassure your old-fashioned mother. Okay, I promise. I will wear my life jacket the whole time. He paused for a moment. You know, we are not going to have a phone, though, so we won't be able to talk until I get back. I figure as much. It should be a lot of fun, though. It will be awesome. I wish that you could come with us. We would have a great time. She closed her eyes for a moment before responding. A trick her therapist had taught her whenever Kevin said something about the three of them being together again. She always tried to make sure she said nothing that she would later regret, and her voice sounded as optimistic as she could make it. You and your dad need some time alone. I know he is missed you a lot. You have got some catching up to do, and he's been looking forward to this trip as long as you have. There, that wasn't so hard. Did he tell you that? Yes, a few times. Kevin was quiet. I'll miss you, Mom. Can I call you as soon as I get back to tell you about the trip? Of course, you can call me anytime. I would love to hear all about it. Then, I love you, Kevin. I love you too, Mom. She hung up the phone and feeling both happy and sad, which was how she usually felt whenever they talked on the phone when he was with his father. Who was that? Diana said from behind her. She had come down the stairs wearing a yellow tiger-striped blouse, red shirts, white socks, and a pair of free books, and her outfit screamed, I'm a tourist. And Teresa did her best to keep a straight face. It was Kevin. I gave him a call. Is he doing okay? She opened the closet and grabbed a camera to complete the ensemble. He's fine. He leaves in a couple of days. Good, that's good. She dropped the camera around her neck. And now that is taken care of, we have some shopping to do and we have got to get you looking like a new woman. Shopping with Diana was an experience. Once they got to town, they spent the rest of the morning and early afternoon in a variety of shops. Teresa bought 3 new outfits and a new swimsuit before Diana dragged her into a place called Nightingale's, a lingerie shop. Diana went absolutely wild in there. Not for herself, of course, but for Teresa. She would pick up lacy, see-through underwear and matching bras off the racks and hold them up for Teresa to evaluate. "This looks pretty steamy," she would say. Or, "You don't have any this color, do you?" Naturally, there would be others around as she blurted these things out. And Teresa couldn't help but laugh whenever she did it. Diana's lack of inhibition was one of the things that Teresa loved most about her. She really didn't care what other people thought, and Teresa often wished she could be more like her. After taking 2 of Diana's suggestions, she was on vacation. After all, the two spent a couple of minutes in the record store. Diana wanted the latest CD from Harry Connick Jr. "He's cute," she said in explanation. And Teresa bought a jazz CD of one of the John Coltrane earlier recordings. When they returned to the house, Brian was reading the paper in the living room. "Hey there, I was beginning to get worried about you two. How was your day?" "It was good," Diana answered. "We had a lunch in a town, then did a little shopping." "How did your game go today?" "Pretty well. If I hadn't the last 2 holes, I would have shot an 80. "Well, you are just going to have to play a little more until you get it right." Brian laughed. "You won't mind." "Of course not." Brian smiled as he rustled the paper, and content with the fact that he could spend a lot of time on the course this week. Recognizing his signal that he wanted to get back to reading, Diana whispered in Teresa's ear, "Take it from me, let a man play golf and he'll never raise a fuss about anything." Teresa left the 2 of them alone for the rest of the afternoon. Since the day was still warm, she changed into the new suit she had bought and grabbed a towel and a small folded-up chair and People magazine, then went to the beach. She tumbled idly through People, reading a few articles here and there. Not really interested. interested in what was happening to the rich and famous. All around her she could hear the laughter of children as they splashed in the water and filled their pails with sand. Off to one side of her were two young boys and a man, presumably their father, building a castle near the water's edge. The sound of the lapping waves was soothing, and she put down the magazine and closed her eyes, angling her face towards the sun. She wanted a little color by the time she go back to work, if for no other reason than to look as though she had taken some time to do absolutely nothing. Even at work, she was regarded as a type who was always on the go. If she wasn't writing her weekly column, she was working on a column for the Sunday editors, or researching on the internet, or poring over child development journals. She had subscription at work to every major parenting magazines, and of course every childhood magazines, as well as other devoted to working women. She also subscribed to medical journals, scanning them regularly for topics that might be suitable. The column itself was never predictable. Perhaps that was one of the reasons it was so successful. Something she responded to question, other times she reported on the latest child development data and what it meant. A lot of columns were about joys that came with raising children, while others described the pitfalls. She wrote of the struggles of single motherhood, a subject that seemed to touch a nerve in the lives of Boston women. Unexpectedly, her column had turned her into a local celebrity of sorts. But even though it was fun in the beginning to see her picture above her column or to receive invitations to private parties, she always had so much going on. She didn't seem to have time to enjoy it. Now she regarded it as just another feature of the job, one that was nice but didn't really mean much to her. After an hour in the sun, Teresa realized she was hot and walked to the water. She waded in to her lips, then went under as a small wave approached. The cool water made her gasp when her head came up and a man standing next to her chuckled. "Refreshing, isn't it?" he said. And she agreed with a nod as she crossed her arm. He was tall with dark hair, the same color as hers. And for a second she wondered if he was flirting with her. But the children nearby quickly ended the illusion with shouts of "Dad!" and after a few more minutes in the water, she goes out and walks back to her chair. The beach was clearing out, and she packed up her things as well and started back. At the house, Brian was watching golf on TV, and Diana was reading a novel with a picture of a young, handsome lawyer on the cover. Diana looked up from her book. How was the beach? It was great. The sun felt wonderful, but the water kind of shocks you when you go under. It always does. I don't see how people can stand to be in it for more than a few minutes. Teresa hung the towel on the rack by the door and she spoke over her shoulder. How is the book? Diana turned the book over in her hands and glanced at the cover. Wonderful. It reminds me of how Brian used to look a few years back. Brian grunted without looking away from the TV. Yes. Nothing, sweetheart, just reminiscing. She turned her attention back to Teresa. Her eyes were shining. Are you up for some gin rummy? Diana loved card games of any kind. She was in two bridge clubs, played hearts like a champion, and kept a record of every time she won a game of solitaire. But gin rummy had always been the game that she and Teresa played when they had time, because it was the only game that Teresa actually stood a chance of writing. Sure. Diana folded the page with glee, put down her book, and rose from her seat. I hope you would say that the cards are on the table outside. Teresa wrapped the towel around her sweet and went outside to the table where they had eaten breakfast earlier. Diana flew shortly with two cans of Diet Coke and sat across from her as she picked up the deck. She shuffled the cards and dealt them. Diana looked up from her hand. It looks like you got a little color in your cheeks. The sun must have been pretty intense. Teresa started organizing her cards. I feel like I was backing. Did you meet anyone interesting? Not really, just read and relax in the sun. Most everyone there was with their families.
That's too bad. Why do you say that? Well, I was kind of hoping you would meet someone special this week. You are special. You know what I mean. I was kind of hoping you would find yourself a man this week. One that took your breath away. Teresa looked up in surprise. What brought that on? The sun, the ocean, the breeze, I don't know. Maybe it's the extra radiation soaking through my brain. I haven't really been looking, Diana. Never. Not much, anyway. Uh-huh. Don't make a big deal out of it. It hasn't been that long since the divorce. Teresa put down the six of diamonds, and Diana picked it before discarding the threes of clubs. Diana spoke in the same tone her mother did when they talk about the same thing. It's been almost 3 years. Don't you have anyone on the back burner that you have been hiding from me? No. No one. Diana picked from the stack of cards and discarded a four of hearts. Nope, it's not only me. You know, it's hard to meet people these days. It's not like I have time to go out and socialize. I know that, I really do. It is just that you have got too much to offer someone. I know there is someone out there for you somewhere. I'm sure there is. I just haven't met him yet. Are you even looking? When I can, but my boss is a real stickler, won't give me a moment's rest. Maybe I should talk to her. Maybe you should, Teresa agreed, and they both laughed. Diana picked from the stack and discarded a seven of spades. Have you been dating at all? Not really. Not since Matt, what's his name, told me he didn't want a woman with children. Diana scolded for a moment. Sometimes men can be real jerks. And he was a perfect example. He's the kind of guy whose head belongs mounted on a wall with a plaque that reads typical egocentric male. But they aren't all like that. There are lots of real men out there. Men who could fall in love with you at the drop of a hat. Teresa picked up the seven and discarded a six of diamonds. That's why I like you, Diana. You say the sweetest things. Diana picked from the stack. It's true, though. Believe me, you are pretty, you are successful, you are intelligent, and I could find a dozen of men who would love to go out with you. I'm sure you could, but that doesn't mean that I would like them. You are not even giving it a chance. Teresa shrugged. Maybe not, but that doesn't mean I will die alone in some boarding house for old maids later in life. Believe me, I'd love to fall in love again. I'd love to meet a wonderful guy and live happily ever after. I just can't make it a priority right now. Kevin and work take all my time as it is. Diana didn't reply for a moment. She threw down a two of spades. I think you are scared. Scared? Absolutely, not that there is anything wrong with that. Why do you say that? Because I know how much David hurt you, and I know I would be frightened of the same thing happening again if it were me. It's a human nature, once burned, twice shy, the old saying goes. There is a lot of truth in that. There probably is, but I'm sure if the right man comes along, I will know it, and I have faith. What kind of man are you looking for? I don't know. Sure you do. Everyone knows a little bit about what they want. Not everyone. Sure you do. Start with the obvious, or if you can't do that, start with what you don't want. Like, is it all right if he's in a motorcycle gang? Teresa smiled and picked from the stock. Her hand was coming together. Another card and she'd be done. She threw down the jack of hearts. Why are you so interested? Oh, just humor an old friend, will you? Fine, no motorcycle gang, that's for sure, she said with a shake of her head. She thought for a moment. I guess most of all, he would have to be the kind of man who would be faithful to me. Faithful to us throughout our relationship. I have already had another kind of man, and I can't go through something like that again. And I think I would like someone my own age or close to it, if possible as well. Teresa stopped her and frowned a little. And give me a second, I'm thinking. This isn't as easy as it sounds. I guess I would go with the standard cliché. I would like him to be handsome, kind, intelligent, and charming. You know, all those good things that women want in a man. Again she paused. Diana picked up the jack. Her expression showed her pleasure at putting Teresa on the spot. And he would have to spend time with Kevin as if he were his own son. That is really important to me. Oh, and he would have to be romantic too. I'd love to receive some flowers now and then. And athletic too. I can respect a man if I could beat him in arm wrestling. That's is it? Yep, that's all. So let me see if I have got this right. You want a faithful, charming, handsome, 30-something-year-old man who is also intelligent, romantic, and athletic. And he has to be good with Kevin, right? You got it. She took a deep breath as she laid her hand on the table. Well, at least you are not picky, Jean. After losing decisively in Jean Rummy, Teresa went inside to start one of the books she would brought with her. She sat in a window seat along the back side of the house while Diana went back to her own book. Brian found yet another golf tournament and spent the afternoon watching it avidly, making comments to no one in particular whenever something caught his interest. At 6 that evening, and more important, after the golf tournament had ended, Brian and Dana went for a walk along the beach, and Teresa stayed behind and watched from the window as they strolled hand in hand along the water's edge. They had an ideal relationship, she thought, as she watched them. They had a completely different interest, yet that seemed to keep them together instead of driving them apart. After the sun went down, the three of them drew to Heine's and had dinner at Sam's Crab House, a thriving restaurant that deserved its reputation. It was crowded and they had to wait an hour for seats. But the steamed crabs and drawn butter were worth it. The butter had been flavored with garlic, and among the three of them they went through 6 beers in 2 hours. Towards the end of the dinner, Brian asked about the letter that had washed up. I read it when I got back from golfing. Diana had pinned it to the refrigerator. Diana shrugged and laughed. She turned to Teresa with an "I told you someone would do that" look in her eyes, but said nothing. "It washed up on the beach. I found it when I was jogging." Brian finished his beer and went on. "It was a quiet letter. It seemed so sad." "I know, that's how I felt when I read it." "Do you know where Wrightville Beach is?" "No, I have never heard of it." "It is in North Carolina," Brian said as he reached into the pocket for a cigarette. "I had a golf trip down there once. Great courses, a little flat but playable." Diana chimed in with a note with Brian, everything is somehow connected to golf. Teresa asked, "Where in North Carolina?" Brian lit his cigarette and inhaled. As he exhaled, he spoke. "Near Wilmington. Or actually, it might even be a part of it. I'm not exactly sure about the boundaries."
If you are driving, it's about an hour and a half north of Myrtle Beach. Have you ever heard of the movie Cape Fear? Sure. The Cape Fear River is in Wilmington, and that is where both of the movies were set. Actually, a lot of movies are filmed there. Most of the major studios have a presence in town. Whitesville Beach is an island right off the coast. Very developed. It's almost a resort community now. It's where a lot of the stars stay while they are on location filming. How come I have never heard of it? I don't know. I guess it doesn't get much attention because of Myrtle Beach, but it's popular down south. The beaches are beautiful, white sand, warm water, and it's a great place to spend a week if you ever get the chance. Teresa didn't respond, and Diana spoke again with a hint of mischief in her tone. So now we know where our mysteries writer is from. Teresa shrugged. I suppose so. But there is still no way to tell for sure. It could have been a place where they vacationed or visited. It doesn't mean he lives there. Diana shook her head. I don't think so. The way the letter was written, it just seemed like his dream was too real to include a place he had only been to once or twice. You have really given this some thought, haven't you? Instincts. You learn to go with them, and I would be willing to bet that Wrightsville Beach or Wilmington is his home. So what? Diana reached over to Brian's hands and took the cigarette. Breathed deeply and kept it as her own. She had done this for years. In her mind, because she didn't like it, she wasn't officially addicted. Brian, without seeming to notice what she had done, lit another. Diana leaned forward. Have you given any more thought to having the letter published? Not really. I still don't know if it's a good idea. How about if we don't use their names, just their initials? We can even change the name of Wrightsville Beach if you want to. Why is this so important to you? Because I know a good story when I see one. More than that, I think that this would be meaningful to a lot of people. Nowadays, people are so busy that romance seems to be slowly dying out. This letter shows that it is still possible. Teresa absently reached for a strand of hair and began to twist it. A habit since childhood. It is what she did whenever she was thinking about something. After a long moment, she finally responded, "All right, you will do it." "Yes, but like you said, we will use only their initials and we will omit the part about Wrightsville Beach. And I will write a couple of sentences to introduce it." "I am so glad," Diana cried with girlish enthusiasm. "I knew you would. We will fax it in tomorrow." Later that night, Teresa wrote out the beginning of the clue in longhand on some stationery she found in the desk drawer in the den. When she was finished, she went to her room, set the 2 pages on the bedstand behind her, then crawled into bed, and that night she slept faithfully. The following day, Teresa and Diana went into Chatham and had the letter typed in a print shop. Since neither of them had brought their portable computers, and Teresa was insistent that the column not include certain information. It seemed like the most logical thing to do. When the clue was ready, they faxed it in, and it would run in the next day's paper. The rest of the morning and afternoon were spent like the day before. Shopping, relaxing at the beach, easy conversation, and a delicious dinner. When the paper arrived early the next morning, Teresa was the first to read it. She woke early, finished her run before Diana and Brian were up, then opened the paper and read the column. 4 days ago, while I was on a vacation, I was listening to some old song on the radio and heard Sting singing "Message in a Bottle," spurred to action by his impatient crooning. I raced to the beach to find a bottle of my own. Within minutes, I found one. And sure enough, it had a message inside. Actually, I didn't hear the song first. I made that up for dramatic effect, but I did find a bottle the other morning with a deeply moving message inside. I haven't been able to get it off my mind, and although it isn't something I would normally write about, in a time where everlasting love and commitment seem to be in such short supply, I was hoping you would find it as meaningful as I did. The rest of the column was devoted to the letter when Diana joined Teresa for breakfast. She read the column as well before looking at anything else. "Marvelous," she said when she finished. "It looks even better in a print than I thought it would. You are going to get a lot of mail from this column." "Do you think so?" "Absolutely, I'm sure of it." "Even more than usual?" tons more. I can feel it. In fact, I am going to call John today. I'm going to have him place this one the wire a couple times this week. You may even get some Sunday runs with this one. Well, we will see, Teresa said as she ate a bagel, not really sure whether to believe Diana or not, but curious nonetheless. This video is taken for Navid Daria's page.